Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Let's Develop. I'm Chris Woolley, your host for the show today, and we have a fun lineup. We have the art of storytelling with Kristy Steeves today. It's going to be pretty flippin' awesome because she's really cool. If this is your first time joining us for Let's Develop, well, welcome. And this is a webinar series brought to you by American Color Imaging. And what we do is we reach out to some of the top photographers in the US and we go over cool photography related things. And so if you have an idea for a topic, whether it's nature landscapes or how to do Photoshop or something like that, give us a shout out on here because it's kind of cool. And I do want to give big thanks to American Color Imaging. If you missed the last episode, you can find that on acilab.com/let's develop. We had Chris Paulus here with an intro to intro to restorations, and so you can check that one out on ACI Lab as well as all the previous episodes that we have had. So make sure that we're looking at those. Now, if you do have questions at any point during this program, feel free to type it into chat. So I'll be moderating that with Kristy so we can ask her questions and interrupt her and learn more about her storytelling process. All right, so we are about ready to get started. So let's learn more about Kristy, who our speaker is. So she's worked in television as a news reporter for 25 years before switching to become a professional photographer. She specializes in children, pets, high school senior portraits, and doing corporate headshots. She's actively involved in the photography industry, serving as both a PPA-approved juror and a council member. She's on the board of governors for the American Society of Photographers, and previously the president and vice president of the Professional Photographers of Northeast Ohio. She's won a crazy amount of awards, both in photography and otherwise. She's got 4 television Emmy Awards, PPA Diamond Photographer of the Year, and a 2-time finalist for the IPC Grand Imaging Awards. Crazy cool. She's a self-described class clown and just an all-around great person. So, Kristy, I'm super excited to have you here and to start sharing some of the storytelling information. And I know everybody else is too. What do you got for us?
Well, great. Thank you, Chris. Before I get going, I don't know if anybody wants to write answers in the chat, but I want to know first, how many of you struggle with coming up with images that tell stories? And what you struggle with, because that's something we might be able to address, as we go along. Chris can field those questions. I guess we just have to put the questions in the chat bar.
Yep, we're getting people saying, yep, we struggle often. Hands raising, yes. I think everybody does that one.
Okay. So what I'm going to talk about, and first, just to set up the stage, Chris has already talked about the fact that I was a broadcast journalist for 25 years. And people would come up and say, hey, aren't you that TV lady? Or people would, comment about me being a journalist. And I would tell them, even I worked in television, that I would say, I'm not a journalist, I'm a storyteller. I was telling people stories and stories of events. And, over time I evolved as a storyteller in television. Well, then, I switched careers to do my other passion, which is photography in 2009. And storytelling didn't come to me right away, even though I had just spent 25 years as a visual storyteller, but it's with video and with the written word. So what we're going to do is first set up the stage of what is storytelling before we move on with examples of storytelling. So it's an art. That's why it's called the art of storytelling. It's not a process, method, or technique. It's something that requires creativity, skill, and lots of practice. So just like, we have to practice, if we're photographing landscape, that takes time to learn how to do it properly. If we're photographing in a studio, to know the settings in our cameras, our lights, posing. The same thing with storytelling. It takes time to become a good storytelling. It's not something that you can just grasp one time, after one course. It's trial and error process of mastery. And I've had my trial and error process. And I'm going to show you some of the images at one point, my evolution, in hopes that you can see my thought process of where I started and where I've evolved to where I am now. So, here's what we face as still photographers: the challenge of storytelling. We have to inspire, entertain, or educate our audience with far less to work with than, let's say, a movie director or a book author. The average length of a book is between 200 and 400 pages. Now, if you take, let's say, a movie, the average movie is 90 minutes. There are 24 frames per second. That means a director has 129,600 frames to build a complete story from beginning to end. Then there's the still photographer. We have to tell our stories in one frame. That's the challenge compared to a book author and, let's say, a movie director. And it's not just about figuring out the right aperture, the lens sharpness, or your camera settings. It's about more important elements, and we're going to talk about this a lot, such as voice, emotion, and point of view. And emotion is a biggie, and we're going to spend a lot of time on that. So I'm going to introduce you to Chef Danica Barreau. She lives in Ohio, which is where I am from. And she's a photographer. She's a pet photographer. And she has allowed me to photograph her for a print competition in the past. And I have some of the images that we created, storytelling images of her. She's great in front of the camera, as you can see. But she is a chef. Her father's a chef. She's a gourmet cook and loves to cook. So we created a character of her. And she wore her father's chef uniform. But we're having Danica help with some storytelling. So she's got a great recipe, for great storytelling. And it's the 6 W's. And it's really 5 W's and an H, but it's called the 6 W's. And these are the basic ingredients in storytelling. So this is the foundation that I use when working up the stories that I create as a photographer. And that's who, what, when, where, how, and why. So it's who will be your subject, what is your idea, when is the timeline, could be the 18th century, 19th century, 20th century, where is the setting, how will you execute your idea, and we're going to be talking about that as well, and why do you want to tell the story. So the 6 W's are used in journalism, police investigations, and research. So when I was in college studying journalism, this is one of the first things that I learned was the 6 W's. And every day I would go out as a news reporter, and I would ask myself, when I would get on let's say the scene of some event and think, okay, I need to know the who, what, when, where, how, and why. We should be doing the same thing in photography. So this is an image that I entered last year in photographic competition. And I'm going to use this as an example. So with the who, what, when, where, how, and why. Who? Santa Claus. What is my idea? Well, Santa, my idea, is always on a schedule with deadlines. So I actually, knowing that I was going to be photographing Santa, called him up and said, do you have a pocket watch by any chance? And he said, yes. And I said, I need you to bring it. So I already knew that I wanted to photograph Santa with a pocket watch because he's under deadline, getting his toys ready for all the kids. So when 19th century, I had a choice with the Santa to have the what would you call it? The normal, the red with the white, the white pom-pom and the white fur, or this vintage look. And I chose the vintage look because I knew the white was going to be difficult for me because I wanted to go low key. These are all things to think about when you're telling your story. So I had him wear the vintage. He brought a vintage pocket watch. So where is it going to be? In his studio or his study or office. How will I execute? I already knew I was going to do low-key lighting and a low-key background, which is my specialty. It's what I love to do. Why do I want to photograph Santa? Well, I've always wanted to photograph him, a classic portrait for image competition. So playing off the fact that he's got this watch, you're thinking about time, but Santa Claus is timeless. And we're going to talk about titles as part of the storytelling as well. Titles are, to me, just as important as the image to set up for the viewer and or a judge, what is going on with this image. And then I threw in, just so you guys can see what I do in creating, some of my images. So I was actually in Indiana, and I was in another photographer's studio, and I brought my own lights, but I'm, in her studio, and photographing Santa Claus. So this is something you might want to take notes on as well. You can see camera left, that's the original. Camera right, we have a picture of a study. Well, I don't have a really cool study. So I use stock images from depositphotos.com. And if you, Chris, I don't know if you want to type that in the chat for everybody, depositphotos.com.
Sure.
And sometimes they have specials too. Usually right around the holidays, where they have like a really awesome sale where you can buy like 100 images for $100 and you get a whole year to go in and pick from these images. So I use Deposit Photos. I put that behind him to create more of a story versus a background. But for those of you who might be new to competition, if you notice that I have a guide image, I have to put that with Santa Claus when I enter this in competition, because that's not my image. So I'm showing the judges what is mine. It's Santa and the table, but what is not mine is, the guide image, the Deposit Photos stock image. And he did really well for me in competition. Here's another example of the 6Ws. This is my friend Lori McCoy, who's a photographer. So what's my idea? Having her perform with a grand or baby grand piano, when the present time, finding a stage with a grand or baby grand piano was very difficult. But I put feelers out and actually went to a church of another photographer, to do this image. And how am I going to execute my idea? This was hard for me. I used 6 lights and 2 reflectors to get the piano lit, to get her lit, and to get rim lighting, also called separation lighting, on her back and her arm and around the piano. And why did I want to do this? I wanted to create a visual story for my friend Lori. She's a concert pianist. And so this was for her, but it was also for me for image competition. I titled this Grand Obsession. As a concert pianist, she's got to be obsessed with playing the piano. So grand, playing off the, baby grand piano, and obsession. And for those of you who do photographic competition, I was thrilled that she received an Imaging Excellence Award as well. Here's the before and after. And that floor was horrible. So editing this was, a real challenge. But I like to show the before and after so people can see that, what's on the right, camera right, that's, what comes out of my camera is camera left. I have to edit and work on it to get it to that level. So here's another one with the 6Ws. This is one of my favorite images. This is about the pregnant mom. And she was a client. I photographed her wedding years ago. And I knew she was pregnant. And this idea actually came to me like split second. I knew she was going to give birth just like in a few weeks. And this thought came to me about creating her story where she's already, got 4 kids. And, she's got laundry to do and she's dealing with kids. And I'm going to tell you the title in a second because it helps set up the story. But I wanted to incorporate her 4 children, and I joke with her, how's that for a maternity session? Normally it's beautiful women in beautiful gowns. And we created this maternity session, incorporated her kids. And I like to have a lot of sense of humor in my images. So I already knew, I called her and said, I need you guys in blue jeans, barefoot, white t-shirts. I wanted her daughter to braid her hair and have your one son, who's a musician, to bring his trumpet. This was in my studio, and I went high-key lighting and with the background too. And my reason, I wanted to tell a humorous story. I like it in competition when I can make the viewers and the judges laugh. So the title is, What Was I Thinking? Getting pregnant yet again. So, and then here's, the before images. So I photographed them separately so I had decent lighting on all of them. And my studio is obviously not wide enough for me to put all of them together. So this is how, I photographed them, composited them. Originally, I started off in color, but one thing to think about with storytelling, if you go high key or low key, that helps tell a story. Low key can be more dramatic and moody. High key is more fun, lighthearted. So I chose to go high key with this, but color can serve as a distraction. So this is the first time I ever went black and white with a high key image. And this image scored really high and ended up in the showcase book. So I was just thrilled, and the mom loved this. She ordered a big, wall portrait for herself. Here we go with Danica Barreau again. We have more food for thought. And this is one of the images that I entered last year, and she did get an imaging excellence. Danica is great in front of the camera. But this is me telling her story. She loves to cook. It runs in her family. Her father is a professional chef. So it meant a lot to her also. She's wearing his uniform. And he now has this image, and you're going to see the other one that I did of her. I entered these. This one is the second year. I have another one of her I entered the first year with different stories. But she had these printed out and framed and gave it to her dad. And he's got these in his kitchen because, it means something to her. I'm telling her story. So what is the key ingredient in making a great visual story? Impact. I'm going to talk a lot about impact. This is number one to me. And in judging, we have the 12 elements of a merit image, and impact is number one on the list. So with that, I titled this Slice and Dice. And this image did get an imaging excellence. And this is also one of my favorite images of the ones that I've done. Now, it's not all about photographic competition. We can bring impact into our client work as well. And impact is all about emotion. It's eliciting emotion from the viewer. So on the left, we have a nice traditional family portrait. And while this family was here, I was starting to kind of get an idea that they're very fun-loving. So I said to them, you guys want to have some fun? And they went, yeah. So we started having them get silly and goofy. And there was so much laughter. I mean, just laughing and laughing and laughing and laughing, through this process. I have hats in the studio. So at one point I said, everybody go pick a hat. And we put the hats on. And they had a blast with this. So I got individual images. They were having so much fun, they didn't want to do the traditional. This was their personality. This is what they are all about as a family. And these were the images that the family purchased more than the traditional family portrait because it brought out some of their story. So I do this a lot for clients. They love these. And this tells a story, to have hanging on their wall, conversation piece when guests come over. They can laugh and giggle, with these images. So I have other images from other photographers that have loaned me their work that I think aid in talking about storytelling. So when we talk about, it's all about emotion, this image is from Judy Reinford, and she's playing off of sadness. And with the title, We Will Miss You. And it did receive, Loan/Imaging Excellence Award. And she's got these two giraffes, symbolic of people like, adults watching maybe their child go off to college or moving to another state with a new job, going to boarding school. And there's a sadness there as they're watching their child, grow up and move on, without them. That's emotion right there in storytelling. This is one of my images. This is my sense of humor. And I did enter this in competition titled, That's Not Coal in Your Stocking. And I have this here as an example because when this image came up during ASP's Images of Distinguished competition, one of the judges said, this disturbs me. And another judge responded, yes, but it has impact. And it does have impact. It disturbed some people. It made other people laugh. But, being disturbed or, bothered or upset, that's still emotion and it gives it impact. So this is Kenneth Martin, phenomenal landscape photographer. Impact is also about the wow factor. It's seeing into the soul of a place and making a discovery. It's also seeing into the soul of a dwelling and capturing its ambiance. So when we're talking about seeing into the soul of something, it's getting to the essence, of this, like this. Seeing into the soul of an animal and capturing its essence. This is Susan Gertz, a phenomenal pet photographer. And I love the title of this image that sets up a great story, Pork Star. Playing off the fact that it's a pig, porn star, pork star. Great use of titling and storytelling. But look at those eyes. I mean, just looking in to the soul of this animal and capturing its essence ties in with emotion and that wow factor. Flowers, seeing into the soul of a flower and discovering its personality. I want to talk about Peggy Steinberg. She taught me something that I just thought was so wonderful. Because my specialty is people. I do animals, but primarily people. And Peggy primarily does flowers. And when I photograph people, I spend time with them trying to get to their essence and figuring out their stories. She says she does the same thing with flowers. She spends a lot of time with her flowers just to start feeling the essence of them, their personality, before she even photographs them. And I just thought that was like so awesome. And then she knows how she wants to pose the flower. High key, low key, what she wants to do with it. So, you can do that, with other living things besides just, people. Spending time getting into the soul of a flower. And, with people, getting into the soul of a human and feeling empathy. This title sets up a story. The heart never forgets. It's leaving something for the viewer's imagination, which is part of storytelling as well, to fill in the blanks. I'm going to look at this little girl and come up with my own story in my mind, just from her facial expression, the way she's looking at me with these little puppy dog eyes, a little sadness there, but the title, The Heart Never Forgets. And then, when we have artist work, it's finding something that engages your viewer emotionally and draws them into your artistic expression. And this is Tony Harriman, and who's a very good friend of mine from Iowa. And this image is title release, a quick story about this image when we talk about the wow factor and impact having emotion. She does a lot with leaves, really resonate with her. So we've got this tree, and that's like a little baby's christening gown hanging from the tree. Tony had a miscarriage, and it devastated her. And, years and years and years later, it still, affects her, impacts her. So she created this image in a way maybe to release and try to let go. So you see the dark birds flying off the branches and then the white dove, kind of just like it's releasing. She's just releasing feelings into the heavens or into the universe to let go. And somebody else might, interpret this in a different way. That was her meaning behind this. But when you have release, you see this little christening gown, the tree with these deep, deep roots. It's got a wow factor for the viewer, and they're creating their own story looking at this image. So these are my images, and I'm using these to set up the fact that visual storytelling has a lot to do with staying away from taking a superficial picture. So this is visual storytelling versus, quote, taking a picture. So a picture without a story is superficial. Without a story, the photography has no depth, no personal meaning, no emotion. If you look at these images, they're client images. This was a business headshot, camera left. Two sisters, a high school senior, little boy in his little suit and tie. There's no story. These are client images, but there's no story. This is Judy's. An image with a story is the catalyst in triggering a chain reaction of emotions, making it memorable, iconic, and impactful. This is titled Penetrating. I mean, oh my gosh, this is an image that the viewer is going to remember. These, probably not so. This one, yes, this is part of the storytelling, the impact, the emotion, the wow factor. And it took me a while as I was evolving into becoming a storyteller as a photographer to start realizing how important impact is. And you're going to see that coming up. Stories are all about, again, when we talk about emotion, making us excited, laugh, cry, or feel empathy for someone else. This is an image that Ella Carlson created. She's from Massachusetts, and it's called Challenged. These are judges. And when we went into, the pandemic, and all of a sudden everybody starts judging remote and virtual, she came up with this. And I picked this image, to present because, first of all, look at all the different emotions. But it's also an example of, here you've got judges and or viewers looking at one image and look at the different emotions on all their faces. We all see things different. We all perceive things different. And you can get different reactions. But you can tell with each of these expressions, there's impact for every single one of these judges in terms of the image that they're looking at. So this is Britt, the bodybuilder. And Britt is a really good friend of mine. He and I worked at the TV station in Cleveland, Ohio. And he's one of my best friends. And he's a bodybuilder. And I asked him one time if he would come model for me. And this is the visual story versus just taking a picture. This is just taking a picture. But when I talk about trying to get to somebody's essence, when they come to me, first of all, I had Britt stand there so I could get my lights set up. And I knew I wanted to do some split lighting on him. I wanted it to be a little bit more dramatic. I do a lot of split lighting with men, especially if they're athletes. That is part of the storytelling right there, is my lighting and my choice of backgrounds. I knew I was going to go black and white. A lot of times when I do low key work, I go black and white. But this is me starting just to get the lighting, but also starting, I just start picking up a sense of, my models and my clients as I'm photographing them and talking to them. So at one point I said, all right, it's time to take the t-shirt off. We're going to progress, and I need you to start doing some poses for me. And as he's posing, I'm kind of seeing, do I like this? Do I not? And Britt came to me so I could photograph him for competition, but I was also going to photograph him to give him some images as well. So I'm photographing him for him, and you're going to see in a second what I did with him for me for competition. I'm not really liking this pose, so I said, can you strike up another pose? So he strikes up the typical bodybuilder pose. And I left my lights in there so you guys can all get an idea of where my lights go as well. I've got two lights that I use in the back as hair lights, separation kicker lights. Actually, three lights. You can see the small one on the right. That's to get his hip, lit up down there too. But it's still like, this is not going to cut it, for me for competition. So I had him sit down and I said, can you do a pose sitting down? And this is kind of the expression he gave me. And I'm looking at it going, there's no emotion. There's no impact. It's kind of lame. So I said, Britt, I need you to growl for me. And Britt is a very quiet, mild-mannered sweetheart of a guy. And I've never seen him angry ever. And I've probably known him about 35 years. So to get him to start doing what I wanted him to do, he had to start stepping out of who he naturally is to perform for me. So he starts growling a little bit. And I said, no, Britt, this isn't it. And Chris, if you want to go full screen with me here,
You're full
so I can
screen.
show everybody. Let me know when I'm full screen.
You're full screen.
Okay, so I'm going to show you what I said to Britt, and this is all part of the storytelling. I need him to perform for me, but he was just doing this little low growl like, and I said, no, 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 no. I need you to growl. And I showed him what I wanted from him. I said, I need your neck veins popping. Uh, get those teeth showing. And get those neck veins popping. So he did. Yes, I got my shot. This is not Britt. Britt does not like this image because it's not him. But he did this for me, for competition because I needed impact and emotion. This is what I got. Bam! My black and white. By the way, I'd never photographed a bodybuilder, so I researched lighting bodybuilders. And I took my lights as high as I could get them and brought them down so I could have shadows underneath all of his muscles. And I titled it, I think the title was really important as well. I like alliteration, Pumped Up and Pissed Off. And of course, he's really not angry. He was doing this for me. He actually reminded me of the Hulk. And I almost titled it the Hulk, but I thought that's kind of a lame title. We have emotion, and one of the judges, when this came up at district competition, said, "This scares me." And I knew right then and there this image was going to loan. That's impact. If you hear, especially a judge, react to an image with emotion, you know you got them. And I mentioned loan, 2 years ago and beyond, it was called the Loan Collection. PPA has changed the term now to imaging excellence. So if you hear me say loan or imaging excellence, they're the same thing. But I also photographed Britt for Britt. And this was what I would call a client image for him. It's a good pose. I have a great model there. It's decent lighting. But with this merit, and I thought, if I wanted to enter this the next year in competition, just out of curiosity to see how this would do, I thought, I don't have any emotion. And I don't think it has a tremendous amount of impact. What can I do to give it impact? Title. Titles can provide impact in storytelling. This is Great Grandpa's Got Grit. And people react like, oh my gosh, he's a great grandpa and he looks like that. There's your impact right there. And this is why I wanted to talk about, titles that, I don't know what I would have titled this because to me, there's not that much of a story. But I knew I needed to play off the fact that he is a great grandfather and that he looks like this. I don't know if too many, grandfathers, great grandfathers, even fathers that look like this. So the title, I think, actually helps set this up. So, and that's where we're going to go into setting the tone. So like in music, a tone is an element of musical sound. It includes the highness, lowness, and quality of sound. Well, in photography, titles are an element of storytelling. They add dimension, meaning, and enrichment to an image. So take this image, Milk Me, I Dare You. During competition, one of the judges, who was actually a jury chairman, starts laughing, and he actually said, "This makes me laugh." It was the title, I believe, that set up this image. A friend of mine, when I was trying to come up with the title, saw my image and she goes, "Well, how about Face Off or In Your Face?" And I thought, that's so cliche. And then I came up with this Milk Me, I Dare You. And I photographed this cow for competition. I was in Martha's Vineyard. And I wanted to get up close and personal, with it. I chose my angle, my lens, what I wanted to do for this reason. And it's like the cow is daring you. And it brought a sense of humor, to this image. So this title, I think, really helped set up an image where it did get imaging excellence. And I was thrilled. I was not expecting it, but I was thrilled. So just another example of how titles can have impact. Remember Chef Danica Barreau? Well, this is one of her beautiful images. And she titled this The Skeptic. I mean, we see, and as Chris mentioned, I'm a PPA approved judge, and I see this time and time again where people will give their images like a name of their dog or the person. Let's say this dog's name is Rover. Well, does Rover give you a story? No. But the skeptic, she played off of this facial expression and gave this image a story with the title, The Skeptic. And of course, she gets an imaging excellence because she did a beautiful job. And the title helped as well. Another one of her images, when we talk about emotion, Last of the Dinosaurs, sadness. All these dinosaurs are extinct and these rhinos are the last. And are they going to survive? And there again, it leaves so much for the viewer to fill in, the gap, which is part of the storytelling too. And gets the viewer engaged in your image. So titles can really help set up some stories. This one, Season's End, another sadness. I know I get, at the end of fall, winter is coming, or the end of beach season, it's like, oh, I had such a great summer and it's kind of sad now, that winter's coming and the beaches are going to be closed. So there again, she's setting up impact in storytelling through her title, Season's End, and bringing a sadness to this landscape image. Another one of Peggy Steinberg's, Happy Hour. Love this title. These water buffalo. What a great title that I think gave this image even that much more impact. Playing off of, these water buffalo are at the bar, drinking and hanging out together and having just a grand old time. So there's a story right there. Erica Lane Harvey from South Dakota. She's called the Bear Lady. She photographs a lot of bears in Alaska. I have Don't State the Obvious. Her story with this image, she originally titled it Just Another Day at the Beach. Well, that's obvious. Every day is just another day at the beach for these bears. It's not telling a story. And she realized that at one point. So she actually flipped the image, added another bear in, composited another bear. And, she's also that negative space by flipping it. Right now, our brains in the Western world, we read from left to right. So our eyes are coming in from the left and going to the back side of the bears. By flipping them, now we're kind of going into the front side of two of the bears. And you have all this negative space leading us across, to these beautiful bears. And she's telling us what the bears are doing. Nothing like Mom's homemade clam chowder. And this was a Grand Imaging Award winner, first place, with this. Great title to set up the story. It's not like they're digging for worms or, just drinking water. She's telling us what the story is and giving it impact. Another one of her images. This image was not doing great in competition. The judges were confused. Trunk loads of fun. She was trying to her story was that this girl's imagination, but the judges didn't get it. So we have to be really careful what we do with our images in terms of storytelling too. They're like, why would this little girl be in a raincoat and an umbrella, out in Africa? They didn't get it. So she took the scene of Africa out and actually flipped the elephants again and then titled it Pure Imagination. So now she's telling the judges, this is this little girl's imagination. So we're helping lead the viewer with the story, with the titles. So now I'm going to talk about my evolution in hopes that helps you, how I evolved as a storyteller. And the definition of evolution is the gradual development of something, especially from a simple to a more complex form. So I started out simple because I didn't know any better, but with practice and starting to understand, impact and storytelling, I'm evolving. So this was my first competition. And remember when we say don't state the obvious. My original title was Bald and Beautiful. Okay, we see she's bald and we know she's beautiful. That's not a story. And I started learning about titling and setting up stories from one of my mentors who said, you're stating the obvious, Kristy. He said, and I ask this of myself a lot when I'm titling images, what is her story? And the second he asked me that, he said, what is her story? I said, she's a survivor. And he goes, that's your title. And this went on to loan. And the new title gave this image a story and added impact. So the judges probably see her as a survivor of cancer. She's actually a survivor of a condition called alopecia, where you lose all your hair. And she came to me as a client because she wanted to start a website, like a support group for people suffering from alopecia. So I photographed her. And she told me her journey of trying to survive this. I don't know if it's a disease. I'm just going to call it a condition. And she told me she's a survivor through her. That's where the title came up with. So Survivor tells a lot more of a story, and she went on to loan. So I was thrilled with that. Now, this one is a good example of no impact. And I have this coat that I inherited. I asked a friend of mine to come model. And that same instructor, mentor, who talked to me about the title of this image, I showed him this image, and he goes, well, your lighting is good, but there's no impact. Where's the story? And here I thought I'd done this great job, early on as I'm, learning to try to enter. I just thought because she had a costume on, maybe she would do better. So fortunately, I had another image of her. This took me 2 hours to light her, move all the lights around. And at one point, my friend Darby said to me, this is so boring. She goes, I don't ever want to do this again. I don't ever want to model for you. So I said to her, trying to get the energy going, I said, shake up a little bit, make some faces, get silly. So this is what she did. And man, am I glad I just took the shot, because I almost didn't. I just wanted to get, her out of this, like, I'm really bored mode. And I ended up taking an advanced print competition class. And we had to take 3 images with us. And I didn't have anything prepared. This was like my second year of doing competition. I had nothing. So I grabbed some images from some photo shoots I'd already done. I just threw this in there, didn't think anything of it. So the instructor had something for me to, critique and review. And she about screamed and literally almost fell over backward because of the impact. And she goes, oh my gosh, you have to enter this. This has so much impact. And I was thinking, really? I had no clue. And she ended up going lone. The judges laughed because of the title, Monster-in-Law. And I came up with that from the Jane Fonda movie called Monster-in-Law. And I mean, it's kind of like, how would you like this person? You're the son-in-law. And here's Monster-in-Law showing up at your doorstep for Thanksgiving. And you got to get through Thanksgiving with this crazy person. So again, leaving it up to the imagination, to the viewers. Well, before, I knew that I was going to enter her, I had to call Darby. I'm going to go back and say, my mentor said there's no impact or storytelling with your image. I hate to do this to you. Would you come back and model for me again? I got to come up with a story. And she goes, fine, but you got 1 hour, not 2. So anyway, I'm thinking, what can I do with this coat? And I think she was around 63 years old at the time. And I remember the Titanic movie. And so I photographed her this way. And when I talk about the Titanic movie, in it, Leonardo DiCaprio's character was showing Rose his drawings. And he was talking about this drawing of this woman called Madame Bougeot. And she was in this moth-eaten fur coat at a bar. And she kept coming back night after night after night, waiting for her long-lost lover, who would never appear. So with that in mind, I titled this Still Waiting for Mr. Right. And this got a loan. This is when my evolution started, really, with storytelling. I went from an image that didn't have a story to, bam, okay, I'm starting to get it. And I had all that negative space leading into her also, part of the storytelling, to give, her like this feeling of she's alone and it's dark and she's desperate and she's sad because her long lost lover is never going to come, but she's still waiting for Mr. Right to appear. So I'm going to talk about Zoe. Zoe has been part of my life from the age of 5. She's now 13, and she comes to me every year. She came as a client. and she's so beautiful, so great for the camera. I said, Mom, I need her to be a model. And I enter in competition every year. These are client images, for Mom. But my first time, here's the lack of storytelling. I didn't know what I was doing. I entered it. I struggled with the title because there's no story in a portrait. It's kind of superficial. I titled it The Wrangler's Daughter. It merited, but it would not merit today. This was years ago. And, as competition and photographers are evolving, and our work is getting more and more elaborate. And this barely squeaked by. This is when we had scores. She got a 79. Thank goodness there was one judge who challenged it to an 80. But this is where I started. And I entered, this was the first time I'd photographed her too, and she merited. So the next year I'm like, okay, let's put a ballet tutu on her. I'm trying to evolve. And she got a merit. And I'm like, I can't get her to loan. What can I do to get her to loan? So when we talk about the 6 W's, I decided I have to step it up in my storytelling. So Zoe has green eyes, and I decided to play off her green eyes. So, I had her come to my studio, and I purchased the green wig. I made the headpiece, purchased, all the green makeup, and then I had inherited this green feather boa, and we put that on her. My goal was to try to get her to loan or imaging excellence. And initially I was going to call her Green Goddess. That's not a story. So I was going to call it Nature's Child. That's the best I could come up with. But I have a reason for having those arrows and what happened with this image that helped me evolve with this image. So with all this green around her, I realized she had this green color cast on her face. And I'm thinking, I got to get that off. So as I was working on her, I don't even know what I did, and I cannot duplicate what I did. I hit something on Photoshop. Oops! And she color converted. And I call this my happy accident. I was not, and I loved it. I loved the movie Avatar, and I called her Avatar Girl initially. She reminded me of, the Avatar people on this planet, Pandora. But I was not going to enter it because I thought there's no way the judges are going to go for this. This is weird. This is too weird. But 2 photographers were traveling through Ohio, stayed at my house. They didn't have to get a hotel. And we got talking about print competition. One of them said, let me see your images. And I went to pull up the one on the left, intending to enter that one. And I had entered her like at some, state competitions. And she was scoring, I think, around an 87. But I accidentally pulled up Avatar Girl. And I went, oops, wrong one. I went back. I said, let me show you Nature's Child. She goes, no. Go back to the other one. And I went, no. I know where you're going with this. And she said, pull up the other one. So I went back. And she goes, you have to enter this. And I went, no, it's not going to merit. She goes, Kristy, it's different. And it has more impact. And I thought, what do I have to lose? So I entered her this way, and she's my highest scoring image. She scored a 96 at the district level. This was 3 years ago, when we used to have, scores. And she was also a Grand Imaging Award finalist. I learned a lot from this image. That different can be really cool. And a lot of times, for the judges, they haven't seen anything like this. So, she did well. So this was kind of part of my, my evolution and learning about storytelling. So I'm going to show you client work versus print competition. This is a client. So I, photographed Michael, and I actually asked him to come back. He was so awesome. I said, can you come back? I'm going to photograph you for print competition. And I told him what I wanted him to do to pose. And the judges loved the title. It's a little long, but I used to ski, but I got bored. And the judges laughed when they saw that. And I actually won a big trophy at our state for this. So your titles, again, can really help, play off the emotion, the impact. When I talk about trying to get to the essence of a person, this man, this is his Civil War outfit. He's actually a retired Army colonel, and he does reenactments and stuff. So I had him come one day and I photographed him. And this is more of a client image on the left. But as I'm kind of getting his essence and feeling, and I'm thinking, what can I do? I came up with this idea, and he actually came back the very next day. And that flask of whiskey is his, the map is his, the candle was mine, and the feather pen and ink are mine. And we created the story playing off the emotion, the last letter. Meaning, you've got this guy who's going to go into battle the next day, and he's writing his last letter because he's going to get killed. Bam! There's emotion, and there's your impact, and there's your story. So you've got Isaiah and his turtle, client image. But at one point, the turtle decided to poop. And fortunately, we thought ahead. We had plastic down on the floor. But Isaiah got all upset and freaked out. And I said, no, don't move. You're not going to step in it. Don't move. I need you to do that facial expression, that pouty facial expression you just gave me. So I photographed him, with him going back to this facial expression, titled it, But I Really Wanted a Dog. And this, I have never gone on to district with it, but this scored really high at my state. And the judges absolutely went gaga over this and talked about it because they loved the story and his facial expression and his little outfit and his bow tie and everything. Client image, Kenise, we just threw some makeup on her, stuff that I had in the studio. That's a necklace that I had, just playing around. And she scored well at the state level as well. I did not go on with her to district. But showing the difference between more of a superficial image on the left versus a storytelling image. Another one, this guy is a professional sports photographer. He photographs the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Cleveland Browns. That is a client image he asked me for. But then we created this one on the right that's got more impact and entered this in competition. He did really well in competition. Pommy Mommy, that's a client image. This is Judy Reinford, the one who's so phenomenal with the exotic animals. She's got 7 dogs now, but I created this for competition. We've got, her headshot, but then we've got some laughter and the dogs, how many dogs can I fit in my arms? I can't, and the dog's wanting to get up there. So a little bit of a story there. Just again, superficial storytelling. There's Danica, that's food fight on the right. Superficial, food fight, creating a story. Chris, am I needing to wrap this up?
Yep, we've got just a few minutes left.
Okay, I'll just say quickly, one of the things that I do as a storyteller is I become a movie director. This man is a professional actor. So professional actors, we don't need to direct. But clients, we do. This is my husband. I had to get him stressed out. And at one point, I was trying to make it look like he's a journalist working under deadline. And he couldn't get stressed out. He doesn't act. And at one point, he looked at me, yanked that cigarette out of his mouth. He does not smoke, by the way. I needed that for a 1940s journalist look. But he yanked that thing out. He looked at me and he goes, I'm not an actor. And I can't do this. And I said, without missing a beat, oh, yes, you can. And I barked right back at him because I wanted to get him stressed out. And I created in his mind the scene that he was in. And I said, you have 5 minutes to get that story done. You are under deadline. And if you don't get that done in 5 minutes, you are fired. You're fired. Crinkle that brow. Crinkle that brow. He crinkled his brow and I got my shot and it went low. This one, I was, getting this man to yell, crazy car fanatic. Trying to show that he's insane. So I'm actually yelling with him. And I had him yell, help me. I'm creating a scene. You're about to be taken away. The police are coming to get you. And they're taking you away to the insane asylum. And you're going to start yelling, help me. And words can create things with our facial expressions. So help me, gets his mouth out. I wanted to see his teeth and get that insanity. So I get right in there with my models. And you can see he wasn't really good with the facial expression, so I had to direct him until I got what I wanted out of him. And then we'll end here, Chris. Just some before and after, I exposed for him, then I'm exposing for the cars in the background, and then I composite the two together. And if people want to start asking questions, I'm just going to quickly do this one, and then I'll be quiet. I got to show this one of my
All right,
favorite.
I got to give away some prizes and fun
Yep,
stuff
you
as
do
well
that.
too.
Go for it. You do that first.
Okay, well, we'll kind of leave this one up here for a second, but holy cow, that was awesome. There's so much inspiration there. I know I'm definitely going to be using some of this when it comes to image competition. But let's kind of go in and look at some of the cool stuff. So ACI is the sponsor of this show, and they've got a special going on with Background Town. So if you're going to have any custom backgrounds printed, you can get 50% off on them by using the special code that's on the screen. That's good until July 25th, so make sure to write that down and save it. They do also have a cool background design contest going on right now with like $10,000 worth of prizes. So go to backgroundtown.com to check that out. Also want to let you know about some upcoming episodes that we have. Up next is Capturing the Soul of the Landscape with Jeff Johnson, and then Unleashing Your Creativity with Passion Projects with Justin Tedford. So those are open for registration right now. And just a reminder that if there is an idea that you have for content or something that you'd like to see, shoot me an email. I'll do the legwork, track down the amazing presenters, and we'll make it happen. All right, so let's give away some prizes now because that's always a fun part. So up first, we have a $50 lab credit to American Color Imaging, and let's see who that winner is. And we're going to go and use the the official wheel, and it's spinning. Hey, Angela. Congratulations, Angela. Got a $50 lab credit. So up next, we've got a $75 lab credit. So we're going to go back to the wheel and see who the winner of that one is. And it is Anne. And I didn't know your last name, Anne. So if you have Green Paw as part of your business, you're the winner. All right, and now we've got our grand prize on this one, a $100 lab credit to American Color Imaging, and the winner of this one. That wheel goes tick, tick, tick. And it's Susan Johnson, so congratulations on that, Susan. All right, guys, we're just about wrapped up. Kristy, do you have any final thoughts for us as we go on and start implementing the storytelling?
Well, again, I'm just going to wrap it up talking about emotion and impact. That is so important. And I'm just going to say real quick, camera left, we've got popcorn just sitting there. To give it even more impact, I propped it up on some wire. I had my husband throw popcorn. So now you've got popcorn flying. Just little things like that can help, set you up with impact in storytelling as well.
Cool. Thank you. There's some, I'm going to have to go back
I wanted to get that one in there.
Watch the replay. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's got that dynamic action, just like the chef shot with Danica going and slicing the tomatoes in midair. It's got that extra little oomph to it that adds that impact.
And so facial expressions.
If we want to learn more from you, Kristy, where can we do that at? Are you teaching anywhere?
Yes. Next year, May 2023, I'll be teaching at the Great Lakes Institute of Photography, GLIP, in Michigan. So it's 3.5 days. There's other instructors. You can get on their website. I don't know if you can put that in the chat.
I will send an email to everybody with a link to it.
I'm going to be teaching lighting and posing, so showing the way I light, pose, storytelling, and editing for clients and print competition. So 3.5 days, GLIP, next May 2023.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to it. I'll have your contact information and information about GLIP in the follow-up email that's going out to everybody here shortly. So thank you so much, Kristy, for your time and talent and inspiration here. And thank you, everybody, for watching and hanging out with us. We'll see you again in a couple of weeks. And have a good night, everybody.
Good night.